It is time for our December reading wrap-up. I like how I said that super dramatically, but it's not really that dramatic. It's just a book nerds reading wrap-up. So if you're into that, I hope you'll stay. But for the month of December, I did in fact properly calculate the number of pages I read, which was 2,705 across 7 books. I was reading 3 other books but didn't finish them in time, so they're going to be on the January wrap-up for the month that I finished them in. If you've been here before, then you know how this works. I basically divide my wrap-ups into the great, the decent, and the ugly. Basically that means that you can stay as long or as little as your little heart desires. If you just want to know about the books that I loved and would totally recommend to you, then just watch the beginning. If you want to know what books that are just fine and okay, so that you can maybe keep an eye out on the bookstore shelves for books that maybe you shouldn't spend your money on, that's great. And if you want to hear me complain for a little bit there at the end, then you can listen to me vent about the books that I think are definitely not worth your time at all, even if they may be quite popular. There's 2 of those in this one, actually. Basically, we'll start off with the books that I loved and would recommend to you, and we'll go downhill from there. I hope you'll enjoy this video, and I do want to note that of course my lighting, if you've never seen one of my videos before, my lighting right now is extremely different, and that is because I am trying to do 2 things. 1, fix the focusing issue that my camera's been having by creating some contrast with the light, and 2, just make the video footage look better. So we'll see if this works. It might turn out horribly. Cross your fingers for me. This is always sort of a risk, making those changes and not knowing if it's going to work. I'm crossing my fingers that this video turns out okay, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you think it's weird or cool or just strange and maybe I should just, you know, cry in a corner. I don't know. You should just tell me what you think though, honestly. But without further ado, let's jump into the wrap-up. I always do weird things with my hands. It makes no sense. First up is Faithful by Alice Hoffman. This was released in 2017 and I've had it since it was released and never got around to reading it until now. Now, I had an Alice Hoffman phase in high school, okay? I discovered one of her books in the public library one day and I went through everything that they had. Every Alice Hoffman book that our public library in my small town had, I read one after the other. I remember it so sincerely that I could still point out the shelf to you where I found them. I could just take you right there in our library if we were to go on a field trip right now. All you need to know is that I love Alice Hoffman. She writes in this magical realism style that's really unique to her own vibe. It's something you have to read to experience. She's definitely a master of her craft. She knows her way around a sentence. She knows how to write compelling characters, and basically she's just a genius. Now, it's been years since I've read another one of her books, but I finally decided to give Faithful a try after it being sitting on my TBR for so long. Faithful is a shorter book, around 288 pages. It's about a young woman named Shelby. When she was a teenager, she got into a horrible car accident with her best friend. Her best friend ended up in a coma that she never woke up from, and so Shelby is left dealing with a lot of survivor's guilt and grief for her friend, feeling like that she's not worthy of living life or living life to its fullest, and that really gets into her soul. And so this story is really a book about rebirth and redemption and learning to live to your fullest again. It's really beautiful. It's not a book that I would read just based on that description alone, but I was really glad that I did. I knew that it would have Hoffman's trademark style, and it did. It was shorter book, like I mentioned, but decidedly full circle, so there was nothing missing, and that's another talent that she has. Lots of writers and authors strive to meet that balance and fail to do it, but Alice Hoffman does it almost every time, and that's saying something. So we go on this journey of rediscovery with Shelby, and that's done through a lot of stray dogs, a lot of takeout Chinese food, some new friends, some old friends, some men she should have stayed away from, and none of that sounds like something I would read if someone was like trying to sell it to me, but I'm telling you, it was really heartfelt and emotional. It got to me at the end, and I think that that's a powerful thing because I might cry at Allstate commercials, okay? But I am actually not that emotional when it comes to reading books, so whenever something hits me in a certain way, I feel like that's a compliment to the writer that they were able to pull that emotion out of me a little bit. Next is the Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I hope I'm saying that not horribly. I think I did an okay job. I don't know. This book is translated from the Japanese, and it has a really simple premise and a very simple execution to match. It's about a middle-aged man who's taking his stray cat turned house cat on a road trip with him to visit 4 friends across Japan. Sounds pretty simple, right? And it is. It's very simple writing. It's a shorter book. It's easy to read, less than 300 pages, but it's surprisingly emotional. And that's the warning. That's how everyone talks about it on Instagram and Goodreads and everywhere, is they always say, you're probably gonna cry. It is surprising how it sneaks up on you with that emotion and kind of hooks into your heart a little bit. It's a slower, steadier, calmer pace. Not a slow book to get through. It's not a drudge to get through at all, but the pacing is just sort of this simple, comfortable, cozy vibe that I really enjoyed for the end of the year. This is a highly recommended book, a bestseller, and I can see why. It makes a lot of sense. I highly recommend it to anyone who needs a little heartwarming story, or a book that's really about the impact that we have on other people, the legacy we leave behind, and if you want to read a book narrated by a really aloof, slightly cranky tomcat of the typical variety. I really enjoy this one. Next, we have The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. I'm calling this one a historical fiction fantasy because it does have some magic elements thrown into it, but not anything crazy. Just a little touch of that happy, epic fantasy vibe that some of us just love to read. This book is the first in what I believe is going to be a trilogy. It's set in Scotland back in the day. We're following in epic grand scale the sister of Merlin that history has largely forgotten. So that whole angle is really fun in itself. If you love Arthurian legend and myth, then this is definitely a new modern book that you've got to check out and sort of add to your repertoire of something fun to read in that small little micro genre. This book is really epic in scale. So we start from her as a child, as a 10-year-old, to her beginning her reign as someone in line to the throne and having children. So we're really doing a big wave of time here. The book itself is about 500 pages and has this efficient writing style that's easy to take in. Larger than the character herself, though, we're really focusing on this shift in perspective in Scottish history between the pagan beliefs and the Christian beliefs, and how in politics and in social structures those shifts are starting to make big waves, and how daily life and war and famine and politics and everything, how everything is combined in that historical world that she's building. There is a bit of magical realism to it that made it a little bit more fun, a little more modern, and a little more approachable to read for a greater age range of audience. I feel like you could easily read this as a young adult or read it as an adult. It doesn't matter. This is a series I'm definitely going to continue as more come out, and I hope that book 2 will be just as great as book 1 and hopefully even better. Those are the 3 books that I thought were the best of the best for the month of December. So if you are, that's all you want, that's all you're shopping for is the best of the best, and that's great. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll catch you on the next one. But if you want to know which books you should maybe look out for at the bookstore or online and not spend your money on, let's get into those. These 2 books are what I call the borrow it verdict, meaning they're perfectly fine, good, decent reads, but I just maybe wouldn't buy them at full price. I'd get them on sale or just borrow them from the library. First of these 2 is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. This is a historical fiction set among a local village on the Thames River. The entire story is drawn and knitted together by the appearance of a mysterious young girl. She doesn't speak, but she has this uncanny ability to look like several different children who have gone missing over the years from several different families. So naturally, all those families feel an urge to claim her as their own. The story is knitted together using her as a central crux, but the story really isn't as mysterious as the back cover would lead you to believe. It's really more of a character-driven, vast story about the townspeople surrounding that village and about their life stories, and that mysterious girl who appeared is really just a way to stitch everybody together. Diane Setterfield certainly has truly beautiful writing, and I have nothing against her writing style. However, I will say that what I thought was missing in this book was the plot. I never missed this book when I put it down. I never wondered what was happening. I never thought about the characters when the pages were closed. To me, that's a big problem. I think this book could have taken me months to finish because I just never thought about it. But it was the end of the year, and that deadline is what kept me going. So beautiful writing. If you don't mind a slower pace or a plot that kind of meanders, then go for it. But I just want you to know that it's not mysterious like the cover description kind of leads you to believe, but still a good read. Next in the borrow it list is Dumplin by Julie Murphy. I did a book to movie comparison video if you want to see that, but I thought this book was supremely overhyped. I can definitely see how a lot of people would relate to this story about a younger girl who's not the typical body type, coming into herself, finding her confidence, all really powerful, important themes, especially in a young adult novel. However, I felt like those important themes were sort of on the back burner of the story itself, which I felt was a bit too self-pitying for too long. I wanted more of the transformation. I wanted more of the gumption. I wanted her to come into herself more and appreciate that part of the journey and not just the before. There's very little resolution in Dumplin, which, as I'm sure you know because it's so popular now, is about a girl in the South whose mom is a made famous local beauty queen who sort of had her heyday and still works in the pageantry circuit. So her daughter decides she wants to join the pageant to make a statement, even though she is a bigger girl and not the typical stereotype. The entire book, you're waiting to get to this pageant moment, this moment of transformation and excitement and acceptance and confidence. And once we get there, it's over in about 20 pages. So I just felt that we could have used more time to really appreciate that journey and take it all in. We didn't quite get that, but it was still a decent read. I just think definitely overhyped. Get it from your library or just check out the Netflix adaptation if you want the story, but you don't want to read the book. I won't tell. Those are the two books I would say borrow it, don't buy it, and the next two books are books that I say, girl, skip it, you do not need this in your life. The first of those is a book that I think is extremely overhyped, but a really, really popular book. It is The Wife Between Us. I did not like this book. This is one of those thrillers that is sold as a thriller but really isn't, that's sold as a mystery but really isn't. The description that you'll find on Amazon or the cover of this book is really misleading. It says basically, you'll make a lot of assumptions about this book, yada 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 yada, compares it to Gone Girl. It's just ridiculous. And it's not any of those things, I'll be honest. It's sold as this really popular women's fiction novel, but frankly it just fell flat. I kept waiting for something to happen, it never did, and what does happen is not nearly as exciting or revolutionary as the title or the hype would lead you to believe. Obviously, it's hard to describe a thriller or a mystery without giving away any spoilers, so if you do want to read it, I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm just going to tell you right now that instead of a thrilling plot, you're going to find a slower pace, weak characters, and a storyline that frankly isn't all that interesting and nothing new. Next is The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. Now, not everyone's a fan of Ruth Ware, but I am. I quite liked her book, The Woman in Cabin 10, In a Dark, Dark Wood. Both what I thought were enjoyable 3.5, 4-star reads. They're not like mind-blowing, but they're just guaranteed enjoyable books. Decently, right? But The Death of Mrs Westaway did not meet that requirement for me, and in fact was quite a disappointment. I had been warned before I started this by other readers, hey, this isn't that good, maybe skip it, but I'm just a Ruth Ware fan and I thought maybe they weren't. So I decided to go for it anyways, and they were right, and I'm gonna eat crow because it's true. It's just not up to her usual caliber. So if you like Ruth Ware, I just don't read this one. Just skip it. Let's wait for her next. And if you haven't read Ruth Ware before but you want to try it, then I would recommend The Woman in Cabin 10 because I think it's her best. Again, they're not 5-star reads, but they're just enjoyable mystery thrillers to like enjoy on a vacation or something. The Death of Mrs Westaway is not mysterious at all. It's not very action-packed. It's kind of boring and the characters aren't that interesting. Ruth Ware isn't really known for characters in my opinion, but still the circumstances around them are usually more interesting. In this case, it's just the story of a girl who is down on her luck and may have received an inheritance from a relative she didn't know existed. So that story's been done a couple of times by a couple of different people and done a lot better than the way this one was. It's just not that exciting, it's nothing new, and nothing really happens. So that's just a little from me to you warning that The Death of Mrs Westaway isn't up to her usual caliber, so just skip that one. That is actually it. That's my entire December wrap up, a little shorter than usual with just 7 books, but it was the end of the year, it was the holidays, and I was enjoying sloth life, and I already miss it, but I'm excited to be reading some great new books. I've already got a first 5-star read of the year that I can't wait to share with you in the January wrap up, or maybe in a review video, who can say. If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what book you've really enjoyed lately or really hated lately. Either way, we can have a vent session if you need one. And if you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, but you like bookish things, book hauls, unhauls, wrap-ups, reviews, all that good bookish stuff, then I am your girl. So go ahead, press that subscribe button, and then drop me a comment below to say hi, because I love getting to know you guys. That's really the entire point of everything I do, is to connect with other readers. So I'd love to get to know you better in the comments, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.